even recognize this logo. Nostalgic, isn't it? This was back in the day where things are quality. But yeah, things didn't really end up well. It's way different now. For the worse. How's it going, everyone? Pretty sure you guys have heard about the upcoming game called AC Shadows. A very controversial game that I may argue will decide the fate of a certain company. Today I want to talk about how one of the most beloved game developing studios became the most hated one right now. I'm talking about Ubisoft. For those who don't know, Ubisoft was once one of the most highly regarded game publishers in the world. From revolutionary franchises to breathtaking open worlds, they dominated the industry for so long. But somewhere along the way, things started to fall apart. Today, they are just a remnant of their past greatness. Just last year, they constantly got themselves involved in a lot of controversies that at this point, unfortunately, it feels like they are done. But what exactly went wrong? Before we tackle that and to have a better context of what's actually happening, we need to go back in time. The time where it all began. Founded in 1986 by the Guillemot brothers, Ubisoft quickly started penetrating the industry by releasing multiple games. And at that time, the quality of these games were actually not bad. But as any starting company, they also experienced struggle in their starting years. However, this will settle down after they released Rayman to the public in 1995. Back then, platformers wasn't really new per se, but other aspects of Rayman just hit the spot for gamers. Art style, music design, harder difficulty by adding more puzzles, and just the overall feel of the game itself is on a whole new level. And I could argue that it became the standard of the platforming genre. And because the game is good, people flock in. Sales rose like they've never seen before, and that's the start of something good for Ubisoft.
A king and his son have defeated a mighty empire, inheriting an extravagant hourglass and a mysterious dagger that contain the mystical powers of the Sands of Time.
A few years later, they gave us Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time. It was a massive hit, proving Ubisoft's ability to innovate once again. Imagine Rayman's platforming mechanics, but in 3D. Plus the fact that back then, time manipulation in a game is so unique and deemed cool. Also in 2003, PS2 was at its early days, hence companies are still trying their best, utilize it for better performance and graphics. And Ubisoft's answer to that is Prince of Persia. Of course, it became an instant hit just like Rayman as well, and pretty much made a name for Ubisoft, but not as much as the next title that we're gonna talk about, Assassin's Creed. Back then, they actually planned to make a Prince of Persia game about royalty being guarded by an assassin. This was supposed to be the next installment for the Prince of Persia franchise, but as the development progressed, instead of having the assassin as a mere bodyguard, they came to a conclusion of, what if we just focus on the assassins instead and make it somehow our new IP? Somewhere along those lines. Hence, Assassin's Creed was born. It changed open world gaming forever. It innovated Rayman's platforming and Prince of Persia's 3D mechanics into another level. Imagine a lore where you assassinate important historical individuals for the relic, a fictional item, to stop the bad guy from doing harm to the population. Imagine how cool that is. That concept of being an assassin is so unique back then that people got crazy. Of course, there are some bad reviews as well, but most of the reviews back then are positive. The game is so unique that Ubisoft realized maybe we could juice more out of this one, right? And literally, they did. There's a lot of Assassin's Creed games out there right now. Of course, you can argue that some Assassin's Creeds are better and even Ezio trilogy is better, which I can agree. I can wholeheartedly agree to that. But the main thing here is all of those things are innovations of AC1. And in my humble opinion, after the release of this game is when the golden age of Ubisoft started. They kept innovating stuff like never before. Upgrade of visuals, mechanics, storytelling, sounds design. Literally everything they produce are often an innovation of the previous game. You know where I'm coming from? They release their hit IP and they try to innovate and make it better to release another new IP. And they keep doing the same process again, and then every release they do, it becomes an instant banger because the quality is always there. Hence, most, if not all, the games they released during this time were bangers. Like, you can just buy a random game from Ubisoft and people will expect it to be good. That's how great their reputation was during this time. And guess what? Their peak actually continued for a long time, from around 2007 to 2015-ish, more or less. Thanks to the release of their new IPs like Far Cry, Watch Dogs, which is quite questionable to some of you, but still, it's one of their big IPs. And also The Division, which is a really good game. Along those lines, they also released the new installments of Assassin's Creed franchises, so it never really stopped. That's why it propelled their golden age in a much longer time period. And by the way, special mention to AC Black Flag, my most favorite Ubisoft game of all time. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just a sucker about pirate stuff. And a big fuck you to Skull and Bones, because that is an embarrassment to Assassin's Creed Black Flag's legacy. Like, literally. What the fuck is that? Since we already mentioned Far Cry, it is arguably their second best IP to Assassin's Creed. Watch Dogs also is supposed to be the next big thing, which it was. The hype about that game was really, high, because they're really promoting it like their big IPs like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry and stuff. And the concept is actually pretty good, like exploring the city as a fucking hacker couldn't be any cooler. The concept is very unique and great, but once they started showing us gameplay footage, you can't help but feel that the game looks very familiar, despite not being able to play it yet, Yes, and more footage, more trailers have been revealed, and it was so similar to AC. In terms of gameplay, like literally, the only added mechanic is hacking. I could make a guess that about 70% of the gameplay is literally AC. And to be honest, with the release of Watch Dogs is where I think they started to show some cracks. But at the time, most people don't really pay attention to those tiny little red flags they are showing, because again, they are still in their golden age, which means no matter what they release, people are still gonna enjoy it like drugs. And yeah, that's how Ubisoft became known for massive detailed open worlds with engaging gameplay. And that's how I'm supposed to say it. But based on the title of this video, we all know this didn't last long. Where did things go wrong actually? There are plenty of reasons, but I decided to list what I think are the major reasons Ubisoft fell off. First and foremost, and I cannot stress this enough, the Ubisoft formula, from innovation to repetition. By the late 2010s, even though this is still part of their golden age, some fans started to notice some trend that every Ubisoft game felt the same. Open worlds became bloated with copy-paste side quests. Every game had towers to climb, enemy camps to clear, and pointless collectibles, like literally the exact same mechanics from their previous game. Even major franchises like Assassin's Creed started to feel repetitive. Especially the RPG mechanics that they added to the series turned it into a grindy loot fest instead of a well-paced adventure. It is so bad. Just who the fuck thought of adding an XP boost into a single player game? Everyone is... I just cannot. The next thing is the greed of monetization. The shift to live service models led to overuse of microtransactions, battle passes, and even NFT experiments. Who the fuck adds NFT to their games? We all know that NFTs don't have any place near our game. Remember Axie Infinity? They include NFTs there. And guess what? It's a dead game now. And also the forced microtransaction, like literally, Ubisoft started forcing microtransaction into almost, if not every game. They put XP boosters for Odyssey and Valhalla. Because if you don't purchase those, the game is very tedious. It's very slow. I remember back then, RPGs are not that bad because if you want to grind for maybe broken items per se or a times 2 XP giving accessory, you can literally grind that with hard work, like beating the boss, doing some hidden mechanics and stuff. Let me give you an example. The Ultima Keyblade in Kingdom Hearts. I'm not gonna say that it's broken, but it's clearly the strongest sword or Keyblade in the game. Once you try using it, you can really feel how good it is. You don't need to spend a single dime to have it. You just have to go extra mile to collect some crafting ingredients and you can craft it on your own, and it feels very rewarding because you know you work hard for it. Second example, this is not an item but a summon. Let me quote Anima from Final Fantasy X. So Anima, she's basically a boss at first that you would fight through the lore, but there's a hidden mechanic that enables you to unlock her as your own summon that you can use to fight. Imagine how cool that shit is. It feels good. It feels very rewarding. I know, some people may argue that microtransactions are optional and can be ignored by the players, but that's literally how this issue started, you know? That's how we got here. That's the same reasoning why Ubisoft get away with this for so long. They want our money so bad, and you can feel it. Now that the inflation is hitting, you can feel how greedy they are. That's what I want you to think about and compare it to what Ubisoft is trying to do now. Let's also mention Ghost Recon Breakpoint that they released in 2019, which had over 40 microtransactions at launch, including pay-to-win mechanics. Like, what the fuck is that? It's a blatant scamming scheme just to get the customers' money. And of course, speaking of NFTs, they tried to push the NFT with their Quartz program, if you remember that. But, you know, the gaming community completely rejected it because everybody knows NFT has no place in our game. No place at all. And one of their next issues is game delays and cancellations. Projects like Beyond Good and Evil 2 and Skull and Bones became jokes in the industry due to their constant delays. Beyond Good and Evil 2 was announced in 2008. And guess what? The game is still not out today. At this point, we might just have to assume that it's a myth. Skull and Bones, on the other hand, was released, which is a good thing, but has been delayed at least 6 times and is basically a meme at this point. Like, literally, they even convinced us that Skull and Bones was their next big thing because of the AC Black Flag influence, you know? But once they release it, it's so shit, it's so bad, it has become a meme. Oh, they even planned the remakes of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, but it just keep getting rebooted internally, showing that, you know, Ubisoft is struggling to finish what they start. So they have some internal conflicts or problems. And speaking of internal conflicts, here comes the next issue. Scandals and lawsuits. In 2020, if you remember, reports surfaced about workplace harassment, sexual harassment, toxic management, and abuse at Ubisoft. That's during the pandemic, and multiple executives were actually forced to resign, and even the CEO himself stated a public apology and promised that Ubisoft will do better. But even in 2023, employees were still staging walkouts, claiming nothing had really changed. And of course, their newly released AC Shadows has led them to a lot of controversies as well, more particularly in disrespecting Japanese culture. Heck, they were even forced to apologize because the Japanese people or audience are calling them out, using Chinese stuff in a Japanese setting, disrespecting the shrines. Heck, even using copyrighted stuff.
あ、このね、これ、copyrighted。
This is. Oh no.
結局、
They left
出
it
してん
in.
じゃん。
They left it in. Is this considered private property?
いや、
Yeah.
NHK でもおいそれと出せないやつ。
Without even permission, I suppose. And there's a lot more. You can just Google it. You don't even need to play the game to know all of these controversies because it's so fucking infamous that literally everyone knows about it. Ubisoft also angered fans by shutting down online services for older games. First game is The Crew. And other games as well, making purchase content completely inaccessible. So what actually happened there? In July 2022, Ubisoft announced they would be deactivating online services for several older games, including Assassin's Creed 2, 3, Brotherhood, Far Cry 3, Driver San Francisco, and multiple other games as well. To be fair, this mostly only affected multiplayer, but for others, it completely locked out access to single-player DLC. This meant that if you had bought expansions for certain games like Brotherhood or Far Cry 3, you could no longer download or access them, even if you paid for them. That's the problem, because Ubisoft didn't even offer refunds or a way to keep the DLC. They didn't provide offline alternatives for accessing the content. It sets a dangerous precedent for digital game ownership. If a company can just turn off access to paid content, then do you really own your games? The backlash was so huge because they also stated that gamers should get comfortable with not owning games. So you clearly see the greed there. You can clearly see where the greed is coming. And because of that, people or the consumers are calling Ubisoft anti-consumer and greedy for essentially erasing content people had paid for. You know, this also added to the growing frustrations with Ubisoft's corporate decisions. And their next issue is financial struggles. With declining stock prices and fewer hits, Ubisoft faced serious trouble. Investors are starting to lose faith, and rumors of a buyout surfaced. You know, by 2023, Ubisoft's stock value had dropped by 70% since 2018 in just a span of 5 years. With poor sales, investors' confidence dropped, of course, and rumors of a buyout by Tencent started circulating. And that's the reason why we can clearly see that Ubisoft went from dominating the market like the big powerhouse it used to be, to now just fighting their desperate battle to stay relevant. Why fighting to stay relevant, you may ask? Just look at their new releases. Notice something? It's their over-reliance towards DEI, or basically wokeness, to gain people's trust. Shadows has a black guy MC. Star Wars Outlaws has an ugly as realistic MC. And another black guy for Prince of Persia Lost Crown. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad on its own, but you can clearly see how Ubisoft is heavily clinging onto these DEIs in hope to save their company. Too much reliance on it made no sense. Just look at AC Shadow's feedback. Most Japanese hate it. This game was arguably their most controversial game ever. In a span of half a year, you would always see a video of them getting into controversy because of this goddamn game. And let's also mention Outlaws. They focused on the DEI ones that they forgot to innovate the game mechanics. Just look at this, bruh. Just look at this gameplay without even ever playing this. You already can sense Assassin's Creed hiding and pretending to be a Star Wars game, right? You don't even need to play it. You can see Assassin's Creed. It's clearly AC, but with Star Wars settings. That's just how it is. That's how their creative minds had dried up, and instead of innovating, they just resorted to pleasing the minority without even trying to make their game better. Also, reliance on the AI made them look so desperate, which people clearly can see. We aren't dumb. It's so obvious that you are desperate, Ubisoft. And unfortunately for them, people are also tired of the AI. This strategy might have worked for what, 3 to 5 years ago maybe? But now, it clearly won't. DEI is just like any other trends out there. It will come to pass. And Ubisoft missed its timing in that regard. the AI won't save them. Now let's go to the million-dollar question. Can Ubisoft even recover? To tell you the truth, it's hard to tell for sure, but from the looks of how things are going right now, it looks very grim for them. Just look at the numbers. Because here's the thing, okay? Ubisoft is betting big on their two big IPs, which are Outlaws and Shadows. Clearly, Outlaws is out for a long time and it's a huge flop. Shadows, on the other hand, we can't really say it if it fails or succeed for sure, because usually you wait until a month of a game's release to tell whether the game's flop or a success. I think Shadows is still fairly new. It hasn't been a month yet, so we should still wait patiently. But numbers of Shadows is looking pretty okay-ish, but at the same time, they are kind of twisting it to look okay. So I'm doubting the numbers right now. Plus, even if they are telling the truth, especially if you look at the Steam numbers, it's still lower compared to Veilguard numbers. And mind you, Veilguard is also a huge flop. That's why I said it's looking very grim for them, because Ubisoft cannot afford a decent result. They can't even afford a break-even. That's not even an option. What they need right now is a saving grace. A one game that is so good, which will propel them to the top once again with higher numbers, sales, players, whatever. And it's not even just the numbers. Just look at these news. They even sold their biggest IP to Tencent. Well, it's just 25%, but even then, you don't do that to your biggest IP, Assassin's Creed, and even Far Cry. You don't do that. You don't just let other people handle the one thing or the product that made you famous, that propel your company to the top. That's insane. People may argue that it's just 25%, they still have the creativity. Have you even watched Shark Tank? People there are so reluctant to even give a 5% share. So basically, Tencent is saving their asses. It's not really saving, to be honest. If you analyzed everything logically, it looks like they're just buying time. But of course, there's still a small possibility that Shadows can do well during its third week and a month, you know? So let's just wait for that. To be honest, this could have all been avoided if they just stopped the microtransaction and didn't overly relied to the AI. And I could argue that it's more important than the AI itself is the microtransaction, the absurd greediness of their microtransactions. I think that's what throws people off from their games. Like, literally. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm just rambling the same reasons over and over again, but you get the gist of it, right? And hopefully they can recover, because to be honest, I'm a fan of Ubisoft back then. Not now, but back then. When they released Assassin's Creed Trilogy and also Black Flag, man. Black Flag. Even though there's some microtransactions in Black Flag, I still like the game. Because I feel like I'm one of those fans back then that even if they showed me some red flags, I'm still gonna blindly follow because they're still releasing good games. But once they keep doing it, I think Odyssey is the last straw for me. After I played Odyssey, I still played Origins, Odyssey, and they all had the same shit of microtransactions with so much repetitive side quests and mechanics. I feel like, no. Once you play Black Flag, you played everything. Just play one Assassin's Creed. Just play one Assassin's Creed and you literally played every Assassin's Creed they release. That's how it feels like. So I'm not saying that innovate, change the game as a whole, you know. Because here's the thing, if you cannot innovate the game anymore, maybe it's time to move on. Maybe it's time to move on to another IP. Right? Close the story. Put an end on it. The story or a plot is only good if it has an ending, a proper ending. They could also choose to scale back, but that's a pretty different topic. I want to talk about on a different video. Please tell in the comment section if you like that. I will make a video specifically for that. So yeah, good luck to Ubisoft. Actually, it's a win for the consumer because this time, the consumers are starting to get heard We don't want any of those DEIs in our games, at least majority of us. And also, we don't want any of these microtransactions in our games, especially the single player ones. I understand putting microtransactions in some degree, but the way Ubisoft is doing it, it's pretty much greed at this point. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching, guys, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. I really work hard for this, so please, if you could spare some likes and share, I would pretty much appreciate it. And also subscribe while you're at it. Okay, that's about it. And yeah, tell me your thoughts and leave it in the comment section. I would love to read all of those. Thank you, and see you next time. Goodbye. Peace.